Rotoworld headlines, and no more important place to start, I think, right now than the Green Bay Packers offense.
Dude.
It's when you think things can't get worse, they keep finding a way. Allen Lazard seen wearing a sling after the game versus the Commanders, a shoulder injury. Let's just keep this real simple off the top, Barry. Where is your concern level about this offense?
Massive. Massive.
Yeah.
Let me put it another way. Aaron Jones. There you go. I've listed the entire Packers offense that you feel comfortable or confident in starting. It's Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is free, and that's about it. Like, as you sit here and look on the screen, in terms of here's where I've ranked, my initial ranks available on Rotoworld.com and NBCSportsEdge.com for free. Here are my ranks of the Packers this week, right? I have Rodgers outside my top 15. I have Dobbs outside my top 40. I have Tunyon outside my top 15 at tight end. I have A.J. Dillon at running back 40. The only viable starters this week in a road game against the Bills. I think you're starting Aaron Jones, and if Allen Lazard is healthy enough, again, he's been banged up. He left that game. His arm's been sitting in the sling. We'll see if Lazard suits up Sunday. But Lazard, the touchdown equity there, I think he's a viable wide receiver 3. Tre'Davious White still not going to play for the Bills. It is a good opportunity, Connor Rogers, to mention that this Sunday morning, fantasy football pregame, Michael Smith, Jay Crouch, and myself, a cast of thousands. And when I say a cast of thousands, I mean a cast of thousands Bills fans, because we're being broadcasting live from Buffalo Bills Stadium, right there in the parking lot. Come one, come all. Michael Smith is guaranteed he will jump through a flaming table.
I've seen that on Twitter multiple times.
Yeah, he keeps denying it, but I bet you we can talk him into it. We'll see. If I say it enough, if I put it out into the universe enough, maybe it eventually happens. Someone will jump. Here's what I will tell you. Someone will jump through a flaming table.
Safe guarantee.
Right.
Peer pressure from the mafia. I would absolutely do it. For this show, I would do it.
All right. Connor, you're in.
For this show.
Someone hey, B. Rubes, connect me with NBC Travel. We're bringing Connor Rogers with us to Buffalo on Sunday, entirely just to jump through.
Sorry, Jets pregame. I have some business to take care of with the Bills Mafia.
Yeah, that's it. What are you going to do? No, but in all seriousness, someone will jump through a flaming table, and we'll have a lot of fun there. So if you're in Buffalo, if you're going to the game, please come by and see us Sunday morning, 11 to 1 Eastern. If you can't be there in Buffalo, watch us on Peacock and CNBC. Packers obviously playing at the Bills in that Sunday night game that'll be right here on NBC and Peacock. Aaron Rodgers doesn't seem, in general, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is like the happiest guy in the world.
It's pretty far from it.
Right, but I feel like this week, more than ever, he's a little testy.
Let me throw something at you. The Packers-Bills game, which reminder, you will be there. Everybody should be watching that. They are 12-point underdogs, Green Bay, at Buffalo. That is the first time the Packers will be double-digit underdogs in Aaron Rodgers' career. Career. Let's hear from Aaron Rodgers after last week's borderline disaster.
I'm not worried about this squad. In fact, this might be the best thing for us this week. Nobody's going to give us a chance. Going to Buffalo and Sunday Night Football, the chance to get exposed, might be the best thing for us.
You think there's a widespread belief in the locker room? That's your belief.
That what?
Is that a widespread belief in your locker room? Obviously, that's your belief.
That what?
That you guys can get it turned around and no concern here about the squad.
I mean, it should be. Unless they don't think they're the right person for the job. I think I'm the right person for the job. So I'd have to ask them.
Rodgers had more to say yesterday by saying, guys who are making too many mistakes shouldn't be playing. Got to start cutting some reps. Maybe guys who aren't playing, maybe give them a chance. Barry, who do you think he's talking about here?
Pretty much everyone that isn't Aaron Jones.
That's what it feels like.
I don't know. Like, does this mean more Christian Watson, more Sammy Watkins? I don't know. I don't know who he's talking about, but I also think it sort of doesn't matter. Like, we want to see more increased touches for A.J. Dillon. That would be interesting to me. But I don't think there's a pass catcher beyond Allen Lazard that's super interesting. Romeo Doubs is a nice player, and he's running a bunch of routes, so maybe he's talking about Watson over Doubs or something like that, or Watkins. Randall Cobb's hurt. But this offense is so, conservative and dysfunctional that nothing here really makes me feel like, wow. Like, I wish this guy would get a shot,
the issue,
right?
I
You know
see.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and certainly not against Buffalo.
Let me throw one more at you.
Yeah, what do you got?
Do you think this is a passive-aggressive classic Aaron Rodgers? I'm asking for the front office to make some kind of trade.
Probably.
That the guys out there are not cutting it. There's not much behind them, like you said. Go do something. This isn't working.
This isn't working. Yeah, that's very possible as well. It wouldn't be surprising. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to see the Packers make a move, except for the fact the Packers never make a move. Like they never make a trade. They almost never make a trade or anything like that. Having said that, like they've got $150 million invested in Aaron Rodgers. They let Devontae Adams go, and so yeah, I mean, I think and part of the conversation in terms of him coming back. And Aaron Rodgers coming back to Green Bay was that he would have more of a say in personnel and decisions. So, yeah, here's the two things I can tell you. For this Sunday's game, the only Packer you feel confident about starting is Aaron Jones, and I think Lazard is viable if you're, as a wide receiver 3 with some warts, right? And Tanyan's in there as a, touchdown-dependent tight end too, mid-tier tight end too, and that. That's the only thing I can say, and that we will also just see how this plays out. That's the only guy you're starting this week, and then we'll see what happens Sunday and if the Packers end up making any moves before the November 1st trade deadline.
Another team we have a close eye on for different reasons, injury-related reasons, is the Baltimore Ravens. Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman did not practice Tuesday. Andrews with the shocking no-catch performance from last weekend. Bateman's been dealing with a left foot injury, it feels like, the entire year at this point. But let's start with Andrews here, Barry. Short week at Tampa Bay. Last week's performance, the most disappointing we've seen from him in a long time. Is there any long-term concern here, or do you think that was a fluky week?
Very fluky week, right? He was a little bit banged up. They only threw it 16 times in this particular game here. So I think Mark Andrews, I cannot imagine a scenario in where you would ever bench Mark Andrews. You're starting him. I have him as my number 1 tight end this week, obviously with Travis Kelce on a bye here. Tight ends against Tampa Bay have had success. They've given up the top 10 most receptions to opposing tight ends. They're 9th in most touchdowns allowed to opposing tight ends as well. They're banged up in the secondary, Connor. So, yeah,
they just look bad.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, DJ Moore came back to life against this
resurrected.
Tampa Bay. Right, was resurrected against secondary. Whatever. Last week was just an anomaly. It was just a weird game. They ran a bunch more than they have pretty much this entire year. They didn't throw very much. Andrews had 1 end zone target. I think if he comes down with it,
changes everything.
Yeah. So anyway, no. Again, literally my number 1 tight end for this week.
All right. Once again, we mentioned Rashad Bateman did not practice Tuesday. It seems like a reoccurring theme with the foot injury at this point. Obviously, Bateman has not lived up to where he was drafted expectations, both in the fantasy world and in the real world. This guy was a former first-round pick, was expected to come in and be the wide receiver 1 there in Baltimore. Is there any upside left for Bateman, or do you think this is just a constant issue?
Sure. Look, again, I mean, like, if you go back to last week, like, it wasn't a great game, but they only threw it 16 times. He actually led all certainly all wide receivers in passing. I don't have the numbers here in front of me, but I believe he actually led the team in receiving. Again, it was, low bar to clear. They only threw it 16 times, but still. The problem with Rashad Bateman has been volume. Like, he's out there on a ton of snaps. He's running a bunch of snaps. He's running a ton of routes. The problem is volume. Like, he's been just a big play guy, which we sort of saw with Marquise Brown. I'm at wide receiver 35 this week, so I have him as a mid-tier wide receiver 4. Again, we just talked about the Buccaneers' secondary is beat up. They've allowed the 10th most receptions to opposing wide ends. If you're looking for wide receivers, I should say, if you're looking for a positive here. But yeah, I mean, since he's come back from the foot injury, he's playing under 60% of the snaps. He has yet to have more than 5 receptions in a game, right? I mean, and they just haven't gone super pass heavy recently like they were earlier in the year. And so Bateman, who's had some splashy plays and has that ability in him, he's a little more boom or bust than we would like at this point because the volume hasn't been there. He still has big playability. I still believe in his talent. I'm certainly not dropping him, but I think he is he's kind of if we were doing beer goggles on Sunday morning, I would say, like, I need 3 beers and a shot to,
not the
at
worst.
Least 3 beers, not the worst.
Good, very nice buzz.
Right, good healthy buzz to start him, but I don't need to be blackout drunk to start him. So again, I think he is a risk-reward wide receiver in week number 8.
Moving over to the Broncos, Russell Wilson limited at practice Wednesday with that hamstring injury. He has said, "I'm ready to rock." Let me read this one to you from this morning. Russell Wilson worked out, and this is from Zach Stevens on Twitter.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson worked out and stretched for 4 of the 8 hours on the flight from Denver to London. Said he was doing high knees in the aisle when the rest of the guys were asleep.
Yeah, good times.
Must be great to fly with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, it must be really fun.
When you want to catch some
Yeah,
Z's.
exactly. Don't you have a private plane? Do you have to go with us? Can't you?
Yeah, you have enough money.
Come on.
Fly private.
Yeah, that must have been super annoying. But anyway, whatever. We said last week, we said, hey, Brett Rippon might be an improvement over Russell Wilson. Nope, that's not the case. No, all is forgiven. Russell Wilson, please come back. We're sorry we said anything. Russell Wilson is the Big Apple of the NFL. We made fun of it, but now we miss Russell Wilson. So we want to welcome him back, and I miss my Big Apple. I miss him. We named him. We decided we were going to name him.
Saw the text.
Yeah, Marlon McIntosh.
It's unbelievable.
That's a good name.
It's spot on.
Yeah, it's
very
so
on brand
good.
for the show.
Very, very on brand. Anyway, shout out to Steven D'Agostino, who I believe that was his suggestion. Certainly was not mine. Anyway, someone get in my ear if I got that wrong in terms of who came up with that. We miss Marlon McIntosh. Anyway, we also miss Russell Wilson here. I think that he'll be better for Cortland Sutton, who partially I think that was his down game last week was due to Sauce Gardner.
Sure.
Played really well as well. But I think Russell Wilson being back is helpful. I don't feel great about him this week. I have him at QB 15, as you see there on your screen. My ranks of the Broncos this week for the London game against the Jags. I have Jerry Jeudy at wide receiver 36. Melvin Gordon and Latavius Murray both in the 30s at running back. Cortland Sutton, though, is wide receiver 21 for me. I do think he's a borderline wide receiver 2 in this one. My Swagwars still play good defense, and it's a low volume offense there in Denver. But to the extent you've been using either of these guys, Russell Wilson being back, I think, is better than having Brett Rippon under center.
What do we think about the new kid on the block and Greg Dulcich at tight end? It feels like with that ranking, he is a viable play for you, and if you're really desperate at tight end, since he's been top 10 tight end for you, is that correct? Okay, so you are high on Dulcich right now.
Yeah, I have him at tight end 10 for the week. Over the last 2 games, he's actually been a top 9 fantasy tight end in terms of fantasy points per game. He's playing 65% of the snaps. He's running a route on 70% of his snaps.
Yeah, that's
so he's
game.
Out there a lot. He's a really athletic guy, 3rd-round pick out of UCLA.
Yeah, big-time pass catcher. Yep.
Yeah, big time. So I think they like him, and just as they're searching for offense there in Denver, Dulcich is sort of interesting here as well, against the Jaguars, who, have struggled somewhat, right? I mean, they've struggled somewhat against the tight end. I think that's an area of the field you can attack against Jacksonville. So, Dulcich, I mean, again, it's a low bar to clear to be a viable tight end these days. He's a top 10 play for me this week against the Jags.
All right, well, speaking of those Jags, we know what the James Robinson trade does for Travis Etienne, but I think the trickle effect of that is, what does it do for JaMycal Hasty? Is he a running back that should now be on the radar for fantasy managers with James Robinson out the door?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, Doug Peterson likes to use multiple running backs. Obviously, Travis Etienne is still he's a home run hitter. I think he'll be used more in the passing game than we saw last week. That was sort of a little bit weird here. But through the first 6 weeks of the season, Etienne never saw more than 53% of the snaps. Over the first 6 weeks, James Robinson actually averaged 50% of the snaps. Again, I think it's probably 70-30. 65-35, 75-25. It's clearly Etienne's backfield, and he's going to get the majority of work. But given both Etienne's injury history and Peterson's desire to use multiple running backs, JaMycal Hasty suddenly becomes interesting in deeper leagues. And certainly, because Etienne's rostered in 100% of leagues, I think he is important insurance with no James Robinson there if you have Etienne on your team.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by him as a stash just because as great as Etienne looks recently, even at Clemson, his peak in college, he was never a 20-plus carries guy every week. It's just not his style of play. So Hasty could find his way into a somewhat important role with an ETN injury. Another update here, Elijah Moore, not active, did not travel with the team to Denver last week. Expected to be active versus the Patriots. Robert Saleh this morning just said, we're all good. We'll see if we can get him the ball and make a few plays. This is not a high-functioning pass offense right now. Elijah Moore wasn't really doing much with Flacco or Zach Wilson, but it is good news that he's at least active and back with the team.
Yeah, I suppose so. If you've been hanging on to him, and maybe they're trying to showcase him for a trade,
exactly.
We'll see. So listen, if you've hung on to him at this point, if you hung on to him through last week when he wasn't active, he wasn't even really with the team, I think you're continuing to hang on to him. I don't think you're starting him this week against the Patriots. You don't feel good about that, but certainly things trending in the right direction for Elijah Moore. Last thing for me here in terms of the news, actually a couple of things real quickly here. Number one is that Ezekiel Elliott, it's being called a knee sprain by Mike McCarthy. He will not practice today. We don't know if he'll miss any time, but just worth noting, he got banged up last week as well. But Zeke is one of those guys that, look, again, he partially tore his PCL last year and continued to play. Either his PCL or his MCL, one of his CLs.
Something in a knee.
Yeah, he partially tore something last year and still played. One of the toughest guys out there. But just worth noting, it's classified as it is classified as a knee sprain per Mike McCarthy, but it's not the same injury as the PCL sprain in 2021. So, and he's not going to practice by the way, James Robinson, speaking of Travis Etienne in that Jacksonville Jaguars backfield, he passes physical. He's slated to practice today, according to our friend Rich Cimini of ESPN.com. And then I think that's about it for news. That's really,
Zeke missing a game. How high would that bump Tony Pollard up in the rankings for you? I mean, that has to be a boost like no other, right? Just because of how short his workload is when Zeke plays.
He'd be a top 10 play. I mean, they're home to the Bears. You can run on the Bears. Obviously, Chicago traveling on a short week after the game and in New England on Monday night. And so, look, I mean, for everything that went wrong for the Patriots offense, they still, Ramondre Stevenson had a big game there. I would think Tony Pollard would be a top 10 play if Zeke were to miss time. That's not the expectation, but it is worth mentioning because, again, he does have a knee sprain. He did miss Wednesday's practice, so we will see there. What do you got?
One last update. Russell Gage is out Thursday night against the Ravens. Julio Jones is a game-time decision.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.